Welcome to the Jackie Wall Studio Draw a Tulip tutorial. Thank you for joining me today. Grab your art supplies and let's get started. For today's video, our reference shape will be a circle, so I will be using a compass. However, I have noticed that the bottom of my mug is about the same size, or the bottom of my candle holder. So grab whatever you have to make a circle, and you can use some colored pencils if you choose, or some crayons. However, I will be using a pencil for our reference shapes that I will need to erase later, and then I will also be using micron pens because they are pigment pens that I find do not smear very easily and are very nice to work with. So the first thing that I'm going to do is draw a circle. I'm going to go about in the center of my page and draw one circle, and then at the top of this circle I am going to draw another circle. Now I don't have to go all the way around, I just have to go to the edge of that circle. So if you are using a cup or a candle holder, basically put that down. Oh, look at that, it's the same size, and then find approximately the center of the first circle and then trace around there, and that will be the shape we will be using. Now I've gone back in and made those reference circles really dark. I would encourage you to keep them light, but for you to be able to see it, I needed to darken them. So now we are going to start working on our petals. I'm going to do a couple of the reference points. One is about the center of the bottom of the first circle. And then here's the center. I'm going to come off to the side a little bit on both sides, and those are going to be our 3 reference marks. All right, I broke the lead on my cute little dinosaur pencil, so I've switched to a mechanical pencil, and I'm going to work on this right hand petal. So I'm going to come from my reference line, and I'm going to go up and curve out, and I'm going to round it just a touch. And I'm going to come down to that edge of that top circle and then out to the side. And then for the inside of it, I'm going to come down to the bottom. And there we have our first petal. Now, nothing is permanent, so if you don't like the way yours looks, go ahead and play with it a little bit, and then we'll start over on the left-hand petal. The left-hand petal is the same process, it's just going out to the left. So I'm going to go from that reference point again, and I'm going to come out, and then I am going to come around down to the edge or close to the edge of that circle, and then around my reference bottom circle. And then here, I am just going to come around. And there we have our 2 petals. All right, now we are going to work on the other 2 petals for this tulip. And I'm going to work now on the left-hand side over here. So I'm going to put a petal in right here. And to do that, I am going to come from right about the same spot that the right-hand petal and that reference bottom circle meet. And I'm going to come up. And when I hit this top circle, I am going to curve the other way. Then I'm going to come from this petal right here, and I'm going to go over and I'm going to reach that line. So you will see this petal does reach above that petal right there, and that is our second petal on the left hand side. Now we're going to work on the second petal that's on the right hand side. So we have 2 on the left, and we're going to have a second one on the right. How I am going to do that is I'm going to come down just below that top circle I'm just going to put a line there, and I am going to curve it out, and then I am going to come back down to that right hand first petal that we drew. And then we need to finish off this petal over here. So this petal is curving, and then it's going to be folded in on itself. So we're going to have a little bit of visual interest here. All right, there we have the basic shape of our tulip. Now I'm going to come back in with ink and go over that again and add a little more detail. All right, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change this top petal a little bit before I go in with ink, just because I think it's a little too curved. So I'm just going to take out that line, totally fine, and I'm going to come around and I'm just going to do it a little bit more like that so we have more of an opening here. It's really up to you whether you want to do that or not. I just wasn't as pleased with this petal as I had hoped. Now I'm going to go in with my ink. So right now I could choose to follow those lines and just do them exactly the same with my ink. So I have a micron number 3. Micron pens come in different sizes as far as their tip. So this is a 03. This is a 05. So you can see that difference. And then they also have, which I use a lot, and this one I've actually pushed the ink in entirely, the tip. This is a 005, very, very, very fine. And that one I use for getting really fine detail. I'll use this one a lot. I have a lot of these guys kicking around. So you can choose to just trace those lines if you are using a pen, or what I'm going to do is I want this tulip to be more like a ruffled tulip on the edges. So I am going to use this as a reference line, but I am going to ruffle it a little bit, and I'll show you what I mean. So I am going to, let me just move this up. I am going to come in and I am going to use that as a line, but I am going to ruffle this edge of this tulip. Then I'm going to come around, and this is the outside, so I will keep that without the ruffle. All right, my apologies. I've moved this down. You couldn't see me do that top, but you get what I did right there. Okay, I'm going to do the same now on this other side, and I'm going to come over, and I'm also going to ruffle. Go up to that top. Sorry, my hand is in the way. Try to keep my hand out of the way. And then I'm going to come down and just follow that original line. Down to the bottom. All right, and then we did this petal right here. Now this part is going to just be straight, just follow that line, and I'll follow that line all the way to the other petal. But this one right here, I will ruffle just a little bit. And then the same with this one, I will ruffle a little bit. And then I will come down to that other petal. Now I'm going to go in and get rid of those reference circles. All right, since I started there with the pencil, and you can see I took out those lines, that's where I will start today. So I hold my pen different ways. This is how I hold to write. But when I'm shading, I often flip my index finger or my pointer finger over top, and I hold it like this because I can get more of a sweeping motion. So that is what I will be using for holding my pen, and I am just going to put in, this is my 005, so it's very, very light. I'm just going to start layering in a bunch of lines to show that this petal here, this front petal is overlapping on to this petal, and this one is inside. So these two are over top, so I'm going to indicate that with a lot of shading and movement here with my pen and just keep adding in line after line. All right, I've got that petal started with some of my shadowing with my pen. Now this one as well, it is curving in on itself, and it's also behind this petal here. So I am going to start adding in lines here. I've switched again the way I'm holding my pen. I don't even notice when I do that anymore. I get into a zone where I don't even think about it. So I am going to just keep layering in line after line into this petal right here. And keep that movement as the shape of the petal. So it'll be coming a little bit in, not quite straight lines. It'll be sweeping in just a touch. All right, so I have my beginning right here of accentuating the depth right there within that petal and over here. And now it's the same process for the rest of the tulip. So this one is in behind these two on the side. So same thing, I'm going to start down here and start building in my lines. And continue doing that around. Now this right here overlaps a little bit more. So there's going to be some lines coming out. It'll be darker in here and darker in here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And that will be the next petal that I'll be working on. I'm beginning to see the depth over here with all of those lines. It's always amazing to me what a few lines can do. So I'm going to start working on this one too. I start to just kind of build in a framework of these lines, and then I can take a look and see where it would make sense for me to darken those or add a few or even come up a little taller, which I'll do right here. And just keep building in. Sometimes I go in and just darken it very, very quickly and then put in some more surface lines. Now it might almost be time for a new pen. I seem to go through these very, very quickly. And you can see that now I'm starting to build out how this petal overlaps right here. All right, so now I have to decide what to do with these outside petals. I've got a good base in here. I am going to continue to work on this before I show you the final result, but these outside petals need a little bit of interest. They're very flat right now. So in order to do that, I am going to, right in here, this petal, let's just give it a little bit, sorry, this pen, like I said, time for a new pen. I also do not want these lines to be really dark. I'm just going to indicate that this petal has a little bit of a divot here. Whoops. See, yeah, that was too much. Oh well, now I got to work with it. There we go. All right, so I'll work that up a little bit more, but you can see how that's adding a little bit of interest already. All right, I'm going to do the same thing over here. Add in a few lines. All right, I'll probably build that out a little bit more as well. And then of course it's curving up here, so I'm going to add some lines to indicate that this is the bottom and that it is having a little bit of shadow underneath that petal. And I'll do the same over here. And I will build those out, and then I'll pop back and we'll look at that one. All right, let's take a look at this petal right here. I'm okay with how some of this is working out. This, I'm not sure. I got to work with that. But this over here, same thing. I'm going to make this look like it is kind of a little bit of a divot in this petal. So I'll work that out right there. As well as here, I'm going to come around and work this way. So the lines help to indicate where there is a bit of shadow, maybe a change of color, and also indicates depth, which petal is behind another petal. And it also helps your eye, the viewer's eye, to follow where you want them to go within your drawing. So those are the things I am thinking about as I'm adding in these lines. Okay, I still have quite a bit of work to do on that petal, but the rest are coming quite well. I worked with this, not entirely happy with it, but it's not ruining the sketch. All right, and for those of you who want to add a stem and a leaf, I guess, let's do that right now. So let's get started. All right, I grabbed a different pencil so I can make some darker marks so you can see this since I'm zoomed out. So I'm going to come on either side of those two bottom petals. And you don't have to worry about being straight because tulip stems kind of have a mind of their own. They bend and they're often not very straight. I used to be a florist and sometimes they really were a trouble to work with. Okay, so I've come down to the edge of my page. Then I'm going to go on the outside. Some of these lines I'm going to get rid of, but I'm going to come to the left-hand side of that stem and I'm just going to curve around. And their leaves are kind of the same way, have a mind of their own, and they curve around. I'm going to come from the right-hand side of that stem, and I'm also going to curve, whoops, and I'm just going to meet that point over there. Then these actually often go around that stem. So I am going to come like this. Hit that stem, there, I'm going to do that a little bit more pronounced. So I'm going to come up. It's going to wrap around that stem there. That'll be a little bit easier to work with. And then I'm going to go in with ink and get rid of those pencil marks, and then I will be back. Okay, so this is how it turned out. I got rid of that bottom part of the stem, and this petal is going in front, but then it's also coming in behind that stem, which is very common for tulips. So we're adding some depth, and we are adding some interest into that, the leaf of this tulip. All right, so now I am going to go in, and of course this is folding in and in behind. So I'm just going to start adding in lines. I'm getting impatient, so I'm using my 003 or my 03 instead of my 005. And it's also easier for you to see me put in those lines. So I'm just going to go in and work on that. All right, I'm back to my 005 because I'm not feeling quite as brave. And I'm just going to add in lines here because it is underneath the head of that tulip. And I'll do the same here. I'll add lines here because it is behind this leaf. And I'll just keep adding details. Now for the petal, or sorry, for this leaf, they usually have kind of lines throughout. So I'll draw those in, and then I will shade those in. And I will keep working on this petal, and then I will be back to show you the final. Here is the final tulip. As you can see, I've added a lot more detail into that leaf that wraps around that stem. And then here are the petals. And as I said before, I wasn't very happy with this portion over here, but I think now it's okay now that I've added a little bit more depth there and created more detail throughout the piece. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I hope you enjoyed drawing your tulip. Thank you for watching, and remember to subscribe to Just Keep Creating.